Let me tell you something that sounds harsh, but feels honest. Some people don't hate humanity because they're broken. They hate humanity because they've been paying attention. They've watched people lie without flinching, betray without remorse, smile to your face and tear you apart behind your back. They've seen the performance, the fakeness, the way people wear kindness like a costume and cruelty like a second skin. And after enough of that, something inside them shifts. Not into bitterness necessarily, but into exhaustion. A deep, bone-tired exhaustion that whispers, I just feel better when they're not around. And that's not hatred. That's self-preservation. Because here's what most people don't understand. People who hate people aren't cold-hearted monsters. They're not emotionless robots who lack empathy. They're the opposite. They're the ones who felt too much, who trusted too deeply, who gave too freely, and they were punished for it every single time. So they learned. They learned that people are selfish, that they take without giving, that they use you when it's convenient and disappear when you need them. They learned that kindness is seen as weakness, that vulnerability is a weapon others will use against you, that the moment you let someone in, they'll find a way to hurt you. And after enough of that, they stopped opening the door. Not because they're cruel, but because they're tired. Tired of being disappointed, tired of being used, tired of extending trust to people who don't deserve it. So they retreat, not into hatred, but into silence, because silence is safe. Silence doesn't betray you. Silence doesn't demand anything you don't have to give. And in that silence, they find something most people never do: peace. But the world doesn't see it that way. The world sees someone who avoids social gatherings and calls them antisocial, someone who doesn't trust easily and calls them cold, someone who prefers solitude and calls them broken. But they're not broken. They're just done pretending. Done pretending that most people are genuine, done pretending that relationships are worth the exhaustion, done pretending that being surrounded by people is better than being alone. Because they've learned the hard way. Sometimes, being alone is the only way to feel safe. Now, let's talk about what creates this mindset. Because people don't wake up one day and decide to hate humanity. It's a slow process, a series of betrayals, disappointments, and realizations that pile up until one day you look around and think, have you met people? They're awful. And it's not an exaggeration, it's an observation. Because people are awful. Not all of them, but enough of them that the risk of connection starts to outweigh the reward. Think about it. How many times have you trusted someone and been let down? How many times have you been there for someone who disappeared the moment you needed them? How many times have you watched people gossip, backstab, manipulate, and lie without consequence? And after enough of that, you start to wonder, why am I even trying? And that's the breaking point, the moment when you stop blaming yourself for other people's behavior, when you stop making excuses for them, when you stop believing that this time will be different, and you just let go. You stop caring. You stop trying to connect. You stop opening yourself up to people who will inevitably disappoint you. And yes, from the outside, it looks like hatred, but from the inside, it feels like survival. Because people who hate people have learned something most people refuse to accept. Most human interaction is transactional. People don't care about you. They care about what you can do for them. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You see it in the friends who only call when they need something. You see it in the coworkers who smile to your face and undermine you behind your back. You see it in the family members who use guilt and obligation to control you. You see it everywhere. And it's exhausting. So you stop participating. Not because you hate people, but because you refuse to play the game anymore. The game of small talk and fake smiles. The game of giving more than you receive just to maintain relationships that feel hollow. And when you stop playing that game, people get uncomfortable. They call you negative, cynical, hateful. But you're not hateful. You're just honest. Honest about the fact that most people are selfish. Honest about the fact that most relationships are one-sided. Honest about the fact that the world is full of people who will take everything you have and give nothing back. And that honesty isolates you, because most people don't want to hear it. They want to believe that people are good, that kindness matters, that if you just keep trying, you'll eventually find your people. But people who hate people have already tried, and they've learned that the cost of trying is too high. So they stop, and they live quietly, alone, unbothered. And here's the thing. They don't actually hate people. They hate what people do. They hate the lying, the manipulation, the selfishness, the way people use each other like tools and discard each other like trash. They hate the fakeness, the performance, the way everyone's pretending to be something they're not just to fit in. They hate the gossip, the judgment, the way people tear each other down to feel better about themselves. And most of all, they hate the exhaustion of it all. The exhaustion of trying to connect in a world that values surfaces over substance. The exhaustion of giving to people who never give back. The exhaustion of hoping that this time will be different, only to be disappointed again. So they withdraw, not into hatred, but into protection, because they've learned that the only way to survive in a world full of people is to keep people at a distance. And yes, it's lonely, but it's also safe. And after enough pain, safety becomes more valuable than connection. Now, here's where it gets complicated. Some people who hate people are incredibly loving. I know that sounds contradictory, but it's true. They're not emotionless. They feel too much. That's why they withdrew in the first place, because they couldn't handle the constant disappointment of caring about people who didn't care back. So they built walls, not because they don't want connection, but because they want real connection. And they've learned that real connection is rare. They don't need 100 friends. They need one person who understands them. One person they don't have to perform for. One person who sees them and doesn't judge, use, or betray them. And if they can't find that person, they'd rather be alone. Because being alone is better than being surrounded by people who make them feel invisible. And that's not hatred, that's discernment. It's knowing the difference between real connection and performative relationships, between people who actually care and people who are just filling time. And once you develop that discernment, most people don't make the cut, not because you're judging them, but because you've learned what you need and you're no longer willing to settle for less. So people who hate people are actually incredibly selective. They're not rejecting everyone. They're rejecting inauthenticity. They're rejecting fakeness. They're rejecting selfishness. They're rejecting the shallow, surface-level interactions that drain more than they give. And in a world where most people are fake, that means rejecting most people. But here's the tragedy. The very thing that makes them withdraw, feeling too much, is the thing that could create the deepest connections. But they've been hurt too many times to risk it, so they stay behind their walls, safe, alone, watching the world from a distance. And they're okay with that, not because they're happy, but because they're at peace. Peace that comes from no longer expecting people to be better than they are. Peace that comes from accepting that most people will disappoint you. Peace that comes from choosing solitude over the exhausting performance of pretending to care about people who don't care about you. And that peace is hard-won. It's not bitterness, it's acceptance. Acceptance that the world is full of people who are selfish, inconsiderate, and rude. People who make an already stressful world even more stressful. People who take and never give back. And once you accept that, you stop being angry about it. You just step back. You create distance. You stop engaging. You stop trying to change people or fix relationships. You just let them be, and you focus on yourself. And here's what's interesting. Once people stop draining your energy, you have more of it for yourself, for your own growth, your own peace, your own life. And ironically, that's when you become the most capable of love. Not performative love, not obligatory love, but real, deep, unconditional love. The kind you give to the rare person who actually deserves it. The kind you give to yourself when you finally stop betraying your own needs for others. So people who hate people aren't incapable of love. They're just incredibly protective of who they give it to. And that's not a flaw. That's wisdom. Now, let's address something important. The world will try to fix you. They'll tell you to put yourself out there, to give people a chance, to stop being so negative. But here's the truth. You don't need to be fixed. You're not broken because you don't enjoy being around people. You're not broken because you've lost faith in humanity. You're not broken because you prefer solitude over socializing. You're just aware of how people operate, aware of how often they disappoint, aware of how much energy it takes to maintain relationships that don't actually nourish you. And that awareness is a gift, not a curse, because it protects you. It keeps you from wasting your life on people who don't deserve your time. It keeps you from exhausting yourself, trying to fit into a world that doesn't value authenticity. So don't let anyone convince you that you need to change, that you need to be more social, more trusting, more open. You've already been open, and you learned what that costs. So now you're closed. Not forever, necessarily, but until someone proves they're worth the risk. And that's not hatred, that's boundaries. It's protecting your peace, your energy, your heart. And if that means keeping people at a distance, so be it. If that means spending most of your time alone, so be it. If that means building walls so high that no one can climb them, so be it. Because your peace is more important than their approval. Your safety is more important than their comfort. Your well-being is more important than their expectations. So protect it fiercely, unapologetically, and know that somewhere there are others like you. Others who feel too much, others who've been hurt too many times, others who've learned that people are exhausting, selfish, and disappointing. And they're not hating people, they're just surviving in a world that wasn't built for people like them. People who value authenticity over performance, depth over distraction, solitude over shallow connection. And that's not hatred, that's self-respect. So embrace it, the solitude, the boundaries, the peace that comes from keeping people at a distance, because you've earned it through every betrayal, every disappointment, every moment you chose yourself over the exhausting demands of others. And that choice, that's not hatred, that's love. Love for yourself, love for your peace, love for the life you're building on your own terms. And that's more valuable than any relationship with people who don't see your worth. So if you hate people, you're not alone, and you're not wrong. You're just done. And that's okay.